Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel. May 4th, 2018.
The Kuhner Report is powered by Kelly Financial Services, cleaning up your financial bull. Get the peace of mind that you deserve at Kelly Financial Services.
Welcome to the Kuhner Report. Okay, my friends, Jeff Kuhner, Boston's Bulldozer, jam-packed show for you today at 1:05. Is Trump creating his own swamp with his own lies about Stormy Daniels? We're going to have that. Scott Lively will be on at 2:45 to again urge all of you to join him tomorrow in Worcester between 9 and 5 Saturday at the Worcester Town Hall, whereby he's going to be taking signatures to get on the ballot finally and challenge Charlie Faker to the Republican primary. We need a conservative. He is a conservative. I hope all of you can attend tomorrow, and let's get those signatures to go after Charlie Faker and give him a real race for the Republican nomination. But first, my friends, the fallout continues from Rudy Giuliani's interview on Fox News with Sean Hannity, and in particular, the stunning revelation, to me almost the grotesque revelation, that the FBI had secretly wiretapped Michael Cohen, Trump's private lawyer, and were listening in on his conversations, including those with the President of the United States. Also, that they were secretly monitoring his emails. My friends, here is now the absolute latest. The FBI is now trying to walk back the explosive allegations that were revealed, the revelation that Michael Cohen, his phone had been completely and utterly leaked. It was leaked that Michael Cohen's phone calls were being monitored and wiretapped by the FBI for several weeks leading up to the raid in his office. What the FBI is now saying is that they weren't technically listening in on his conversations, listen to this, but that this was just a pen register that was monitoring Trump's lawyer and his phone calls to the president. In other words, that they were just getting the numbers of who was dialing in, who was calling out, who he was texting to, who was texting back, all of this, and that they weren't listening to the substance of the conversations. Right. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I don't believe it for a second. I think it's obvious. They were spying on Trump. They were wiretapping Michael Cohen. They were doing this behind the back of the president, and they're doing it because they want to get him. Pure and simple. And as Tucker Carlson, I thought, brilliantly laid out yesterday on his show, I think he brilliantly laid out what the stakes are. Imagine if you're Michael Cohen, okay? Put yourself in his shoes. Your office has been raided. Your home has been raided. They have taken your phones, your files, your computer, all of your privileged attorney-client information and files between you and the president. And you still don't know what crime you committed. To this day, the FBI refuses to tell Cohen what he did wrong. And before you know it, your name is plastered all over television, and you're being called a criminal, and you haven't been charged with anything. Listen to Tucker Carlson lay out the case, I think, brilliantly. Roll it, Jared.
Michael Cohen, by the way, still doesn't know why his office was raided, and his phones and email were apparently monitored by the government because nobody in government will tell him, and they're not required to tell him. How Orwellian is that, by the way? Imagine if it happened to you. If one day armed men arrived to your office or your home and seized your phone, your computers, and your files at gunpoint, but never explained why they were doing it. And the next thing you knew, cable news anchors were calling you a criminal. Now, Michael Cohen certainly looks like a shady character, but so what? Shadiness is not a crime. The FBI can't destroy your life just because you talk like a character from The Sopranos or because you work for Donald Trump. Those are not felonies. Basic norms were violated here. Attorney-client privilege is an ancient and a vital concept. And by the way, so is privacy. The FBI bulldozed all of that. Let's hope they had a very good reason for doing it. The government better have evidence that Michael Cohen was doing something awful, putting lives at stake or betraying his country or something really beyond the pale in order to justify this.
Well, and look, and I think Tucker then further makes the case. Well, I mean, you know what? I didn't want to tease this, okay? Honestly, listen to it because I really think Tucker hit the nail right on the head. Roll it, Jared.
If it turns out that all of this was just about a financial settlement with some porn star, which, by the way, is a story that not a single American is honestly shocked by or threatened by, no matter what Anderson Cooper tells you, if that's all it's about, then what we're watching is a grotesque violation of civil liberties. And that would be a real crime, one with actual victims. Every American who believed in representative democracy, for example.
He's completely right. I mean, honestly, he's completely 1,000% correct. Look, I want you to think about it, okay? Just for the sake of argument, I don't think he did sleep with her. I don't think there was anything wrong in all of this. It's a normal, classic non-disclosure agreement. But just for the sake of argument, he slept with her. They paid her off. It was some technical violation of campaign finance law. Is it worth raiding a lawyer's office? I mean, just think about it. Is it worth going in and seizing his computer and his cell phones and violating the sacrosanct privilege of attorney-client confidentiality, which is an ancient right in Anglo-American law going back hundreds of years? It's like doctor-patient confidentiality or priest-penitent confidentiality. Over what? How does him having sex with a porn star, who she says it was consensual, so there's no rape, there's no sexual assault, there's no great crime here. There's no crime at all. Having sex with a porn star 12 years ago, and they pay her with $130,000, whether it would Trump reimburse Cohen, he didn't reimburse Cohen. Here, let's just say, just let me concede, okay? It was a violation of campaign finance law. It was technically a campaign contribution or a campaign loan or whatever. Okay, that's a fine. Really, at worst, it's a $200,000 fine. You don't go into somebody's house like a stormtrooper. You don't come in and destroy attorney-client privilege. You don't seize everybody, their documents, their phones, their computers, unless there was a major crime committed. And so far, there is no evidence of anything approaching that, or a real threat to national security. This is a gross violation of civil liberties. And what they're doing now, make no mistake about it, is now the deep state is saying, we're going to get Trump no matter what. By hook or by crook, we are going to bring him down, period. And we're spying on the president, we're spying on his lawyer, we're spying on everybody. And this is not just Jeff Kuhner saying this. I want all of you liberals who now have basically sanctioned the destruction of civil liberties, the destruction of the Fourth Amendment, the destruction of privacy. That's what you're doing in your desperation to get Trump. I want you to listen now to one of the most famous, celebrated, civil libertarian, liberal lawyers in America. Make exactly the same case that I've been making. Listen now to Alan Dershowitz, who went on MS Left BC and, just gave it to the host with both barrels. And the host was utterly paralyzed as Alan Dershowitz laid out the case that this is now the beginning of a national surveillance state. Hello, George Orwell. Don't believe me? Roll cut one, Jared.
Well, I think we are moving closer and closer to the surveillance state where phone calls are tapped, where emails are secured, without a real basis. I think prosecutors should not be seeking wiretaps on lawyers' offices and search warrants and subpoenas for lawyers' email files unless they have very substantial evidence of very serious crimes. Campaign contributions don't qualify for the kind of crime that should justify the wiretapping of a lawyer. Remember that when you wiretap a lawyer, you're wiretapping his clients, and you're wiretapping conversations between the lawyer and the client, and you're searching for emails. And where is the American Civil Liberties Union on this? Where are civil libertarians? We live in such a partisan atmosphere of get Trump at any cost that we're prepared to give up our basic civil liberties in exchange for getting Trump.
He's completely right. He's completely right. Look, 2 quick points, and I want to then throw it open to you. 617-266-6868 is the number. When you're wiretapping Michael Cohen, he's completely right. You're wiretapping not just him. You're wiretapping all of his clients. The president, obviously, but everybody else. So you're destroying their constitutionally, legally protected expectation of privacy. You're talking to your lawyer, man. The government doesn't have the right to listen in. So that's number one. So this is a grotesque violation of civil liberties and privacy rights, okay? That's number one. Number two, he hit the nail on the head. This is now the beginning of the surveillance state. This is now, as he put it, get Trump at all cost. Now, we don't live in a Gestapo state. This is not East Germany. I'm not saying that. It would be ridiculous. Why? Because we don't have the Gestapo kicking down my door and your door and Jared's door and everybody's door at night. But what's going on here is now a Rubicon has been crossed that I think we're never going to be able to walk back, which is now the deep state is now flexing its muscles in public, saying, if we can get the president of the United States, if we can monitor him, surveil him, spy on him, wiretap his lawyer, and get him on the most ridiculous technicality. Now we're going to have a witch hunt. We're going to prosecute and persecute him over a payment to a porn star? About consensual sex one time? 12 years ago when he was a citizen? They can get anybody. And the real message is here, do not mess with us. You think you run this country? You may think you run this country, but we hold all the legal cards and we can destroy you whenever we want. You're not the power. We're the power. We're the permanent government. We're the shadow government. We're the ruling class. And the next time somebody says he's going to drain the swamp, we've now just punished him, punished his family, punished his inner circle, punished his campaign aides, and we're making it known. Don't you ever raise your hand against us again. Look what we just did to Donald Trump. Listen now to Alan Dershowitz. Give a warning, a fire bell in the night. Watch what you're doing. You are playing with fire, and you are going to destroy our system of constitutional government, our Bill of Rights, and our civil liberties. The FBI and the Justice Department, the deep state, is out of control. Roll it, Jared.
These rules are only as good as the people who enforce them, and only as good as the motives of the people who are behind them. And I have to tell you, I do not trust the government. I do not trust judges. I do not trust prosecutors when they are zealously seeking to go after a particular target, in this case, Donald Trump. Nobody would have been going after Michael Cohen if he weren't Donald Trump's lawyer. That's the reality. People don't investigate campaign contribution lapses or campaign law violations generally about people who aren't in the public light. And I just worry that when you have somebody with a target on his or her back, whether it's Hillary Clinton, who could have been elected and the same thing would have been happening to her, or Donald Trump, that civil libertarians ought to express concern. That's all I'm doing, is expressing concern and distrust of government. I don't want to live in the surveillance state, and I want to do everything in my power, no matter who the target is, to prevent excesses from occurring.
There you go. Well, now we live in a surveillance state. And it's up to us, the American people, to stand up and reclaim our Constitution, reclaim our liberties, and reclaim our country. And I've just got to ask you this. Is Alan Dershowitz wrong? If Michael Cohen, let me ask all of you in all honesty, and I'm really inviting now the liberals to call in, if you have the guts. If Michael Cohen was not Trump's lawyer, and he wasn't the means that they could try to destroy the president, do you honestly think, in the real world, that the FBI would have kicked down his door, raided his files, seized his computer, been secretly wiretapping his phones for weeks and weeks beforehand for a lousy, if at worst, illegal campaign contribution? The answer is a niet. You know it, and I know it. They're out to get Trump, and the consequences be damned.
That civil libertarians ought to express concern. That's all I'm doing, is expressing concern and distrust of government. I don't want to live in the surveillance state, and I want to do everything in my power, no matter who the target is, to prevent excesses from occurring.
Okay, Robert Mueller and the FBI, it's now official, have essentially gone nuclear on President Trump. They're now not just threatening to subpoena him, to compel him to testify against his will. Now it has been revealed that the FBI, for at least several weeks, if not several months, were secretly wiretapping his private lawyer, Michael Cohen, in all of his private conversations, including those with the President of the United States. In plain English, they were spying on his lawyer. They were spying on the president. My question now to you is this. Is the deep state out of control? And has the FBI and the DOJ now turned effectively into America's Stasi? 617-266-6868. Lines are loaded. Chuck in Danvers. You're up next. Go ahead, Chuck.
Kuhner, man, you're the best.
Thank you, Chuck.
Can I get a couple things off my chest?
Go ahead.
I can do it real quickly. If you're being surveilled always and you're obeying the law because you're under surveillance, I want to ask you, how free are you? That's first and foremost. You have to be free to be free not to. And also, when you go to a restaurant, you don't care what the owner does in his private life. All you want is a good steak dinner. Tell me if I'm wrong.
Chuck, you're completely right.
And why are we always getting into the liberal ring? Why are we never inviting them into our ring? And by our ring, I mean, why doesn't Trump ever throw up his hands and just say to the people, what does this have to do with running a country?
Chuck, were you around? I mean, I don't know. I don't want to ask you your age. It's a personal question. But during the Clinton years, the Clinton impeachment years, did you follow that?
His only crime was saying that he didn't do it. If he had just said yes, it would have been fine. If you are not afraid, they can never blackmail you.
Well, Chuck, you're right. But my point is just this. If you remember during the Clinton impeachment, okay, here is a man who had sex in the Oval Office. That's our house. That's the people's house. The presidents, they just rent it. They're renters, okay? We're the owners. So he was having sex while he was president with a 21-year-old intern literally on the president's desk, or technically underneath the president's desk, okay? Here is a man who had sex with a woman in the freaking Oval Office. And the liberals said, it's just sex. Here was a man who was credibly accused by Kathleen Willey, Juanita Broderick, Paula Jones of having sexually assaulted and some of them raped them. And the liberals said, nothing to see here. So, Chuck, how is it that when you have a liberal president, he can literally have sex in the Oval Office? He can rape women. No problem, Chuck. But when you have a conservative Republican in the White House, suddenly it's a crime that let's just concede he did sleep with her. You had sex with a porn star once, 12 years ago, as a private citizen. Chuck, if they let Clinton walk, how come they can't let Trump walk? by their own logic.
Can I be real quick in the response?
Yes, Chuck, please.
It's real simple. The liberals, who tend to not believe in God, are judging Christians with Christian ethics, although they don't believe in God. Isn't it ironic?
Brilliant. Chuck, brilliant. Call again, my friend. 617-266-6868. Okay. Let me ask you this. Double-barreled question. What do you make now of the FBI wiretapping, spying on Trump's private lawyer and on the president himself? And number two, the payments to Stormy Daniels. Is this enough to bring down the president? Does it threaten the republic? Does it justify impeachment? Because the liberals are now saying yes. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, we've got a lot more. We'll take your calls. President Trump is voicing his support for Rudy Giuliani while also lightly chiding a little jab at his new lawyer and attorney. Nick Bovey is in the WRKO newsroom. He has all of the latest. What did the president say, Nick?
Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel.
1237 here on the great WRKO. Okay, at 1:05, the House Intelligence Committee has a stunning report on the deep state's attempt to bring down Trump over Russia. Dr. Grace will discuss it with us. And is Trump creating his own swamp by having lied about the payment to Stormy Daniels? We're going to have all of that. It's going to be some riveting radio. But first, the FBI now attempts to walk back the blockbuster bombshell story of yesterday which revealed that the FBI was secretly wiretapping Michael Cohen's private phone calls weeks before the raid when they broke into his office and his home. And apparently they were listening in not just on his calls, they were covertly and monitoring and reading his emails, including spying on his calls to President Trump and his emails to President Trump. Now, the FBI, in a desperate attempt to do damage control, yesterday claimed that no, they were not wiretapping, quote unquote, that they were simply monitoring Cohen's calls with what they call a pen register, meaning they're just monitoring the number that he's calling, the number who's calling him, the number he's texting to, and the number of the person texting him. But that they allegedly didn't monitor or listen to or read any of the actual content of the conversations. That's what the FBI is now claiming. I don't believe them. I don't believe them. They're liars. They're lying. They got caught with their pants down, and now they're trying to back it up. Because I know they're lying, because they did this with Carter Page. We know they were spying on the Trump campaign. We know that the FISA search warrant, the surveillance warrant, was reauthorized 4 times by Comey, by Rod Rosenstein, by Andrew McCabe. So I know that they had previously spied on the president. And I know that Obama had unleashed the FBI to spy on his political opponents. So to be honest with you, I don't believe him. I think this is now standard practice at the FBI. And not only do a lot of people agree with me, so does Alan Dershowitz. And I want to replay the cut of Alan Dershowitz saying that this is now the beginnings of a surveillance state in America. Jared, roll cut 1. Dershowitz, cut 1 again, please.
Well, I think we are moving closer and closer to the surveillance state, where phone calls are tapped, where emails are secured without a real basis. I think prosecutors should not be seeking wiretaps on lawyers' offices and search warrants and subpoenas for lawyers' email files unless they have very substantial evidence of very serious crimes. Campaign contributions don't qualify for the kind of crime that should justify the wiretapping of a lawyer. Remember that when you wiretap a lawyer, you're wiretapping his clients, and you're wiretapping conversations between the lawyer and the client, and you're searching for emails. And where is the American Civil Liberties Union on this? Where are civil libertarians? We live in such a partisan atmosphere of get Trump at any cost that we're prepared to give up our basic civil liberties in exchange for getting Trump.
He's dead on. He's dead on. Look, I'm going to make a prediction now. All right? And I want you to hold me to this. Okay? Friday, 12:41 here on the Kuhner Report. And I'm almost willing to stake my reputation on it. Trump is getting impeached. Let me repeat that. I believe that Trump is going to get impeached. Not because he deserves to get impeached. But what is now clear to me is that there is a genuine collusion taking place. But it's not with Russia. It is a collusion, a conspiracy, an open conspiracy, a naked conspiracy now, by the Democrats, by the Republican establishment, by the FBI, by the Justice Department, and by the deep state to bring this president down. And what they're essentially now doing is this is a massive fishing expedition. The Mueller investigation is a huge fishing expedition. This surveillance and wiretapping of Michael Cohen is a massive fishing expedition. And they're going to try to get him now on anything, on any technicality. They're looking, and when eventually, as Beria famously said, Stalin's henchman, show me the man and I'll show you the crime. They are determined to bring this president down. And they're not going to stop until they do it. And I would respect them more. I really would. If they just openly said, look, we know that having sex with a porn star 12 years ago is not a crime. We know that a non-disclosure agreement, a hush payment of $130,000 is not a crime. We know that. We know there was no Russia collusion. We know that at best, minor campaigns finance violations are not an impeachable offense. It's not even a serious crime. We know all that. We just want to get them. We refuse to accept the results of the 2016 election. We are telling you, we don't care how legitimately and duly elected he was. We will not accept the will of the people, period. In America, we run the show, not you. We're the ruling class, you're the peasants. And for the temerity of having had a rebellion, a populist democratic rebellion against our rule, we're now going to show you what we do to anybody that you lift up against us. If they were just honest about that, I would have some respect for them. This is a slow motion coup. We are going to head to a constitutional crisis. It's no longer a question of if, it's a question of when. And I think Trump, I'll be very honest with you, I think Trump has come to that conclusion as well. I think many of you are asking Jeff, why doesn't he fire Sessions? Why doesn't he fire Rosenstein? Why doesn't he fire Mueller? What's he doing? I'll tell you what he's done. It's the biggest story of the week, even bigger than this illegal wiretap. His counsel, his top lawyer, Ty Cobb, is out. He's the guy that said we can cooperate with Mueller. Mueller's a reasonable man. Mueller's an honorable man. We gave him all these documents, all this cooperation. He's now out. He's brought in Emmett Flood. Emmett Flood was one of Clinton's top impeachment lawyers. His specialty is dealing with subpoenas and impeachment. It's obvious. What he is a wartime lawyer. I know many of you are saying, well, he's a Clinton lawyer. He wasn't. He was just a hired gun. His specialty is fighting the government on subpoenas and fighting impeachment. For him to have brought on Emmett Flood, what that tells you is now Trump says he's going to try to force me in a subpoena. Under subpoena, he's going to try to compel me to testify. He's going to try to put me in a perjury trap. And eventually they're going to push for impeachment. I need a guy who can fight impeachment. So I'm telling you, my friends, it's coming. Barring some miracle, and that's why I'm urging the president to run the midterm election campaign as a referendum on impeachment, on Robert Mueller, on James Comey, and on the Russia collusion narrative. say, I'm not running on all of my accomplishments. Forget that. Simple question. Do you give me a mandate to fire Robert Mueller? Yes or no? I mean, just look at the latest developments. I mean, I'm not kidding. Unemployment is now at 3.9%. Black unemployment now, historic low. Latino unemployment, historic low. Female unemployment at a 20-year low. The economy is booming. They're talking about giving him the Nobel Peace Prize for having the two Koreas now essentially end the war and now agree to some kind of a reconciliation. If he can get the little rocket man to give up his nuclear weapons, it's the game. It's the ball game. ISIS has been smashed. We're now starting to really eat into these trade deficits. He's put China on notice. We've now got historic oil and gas exploration. We are now fully energy independent. I could go on and on with his accomplishments. Obamacare, at least the mandate, has now been knocked out. The country is fundamentally turning around. And so they know if they don't get him now, they're never going to get him. Because the more he succeeds, and the more he succeeds, look at his approval numbers. They're now at 51%. So they realize it's a race against time. If this thing drags on to 2020, he may get reelected. So for the Democrats, it's a blitzkrieg. You got to hit him hard, hit him fast, and take him out early. Because the longer you wait, the stronger Trump gets. 617-266-6868. Andy in Nebraska. You're up next. Go ahead, Andy.
Jeff.
Andy.
4 points I'd like to make.
Yes.
One, Bill Clinton should not have been impeached for having sex in the Oval Office. He should have been impeached for Chinagate, Serbia, and the Serbia war crimes, and so on. Next, Frank, why should I'm not a big fan of politicians lying, although they do it all the damn time. Why should Trump be forced to say anything about a payment when it has nothing to do with Russia collusion?
Brilliant.
And third point. So as you know, I have a Russian girlfriend. This is beyond what happens in Russia. The worst that's happened is a few suspicious deaths and Alexei Navalny getting convicted for money laundering, which there was actually some evidence for. And fourth, last night we were all at a dinner with a bunch of South Americans. There's Americans who lived under various dictatorships. They're saying, what's changed? What's changed here with what's happening to the president, to Michael Cohen, and those who stand up against the deep state?
So hold on. These Latin Americans, South Americans that you met with, they're basically saying, I want to put words in your mouth, Andy, but what's the difference now between America and Venezuela?
In
other words, that they're out to get our president the way they do in these dictatorships?
They're saying, that they had the surveillance and the persecution of political opponents, and it wasn't Venezuela, it was Paraguay during the Stroessner era.
But basically, this is we're almost becoming like a Latin American dictatorship now.
Yeah.
Andy, as always, great call. Thank you for that call. They're right. I'm telling you, your South American friends, they're right. 617-266-6868. More with your calls next. 12:54 here on the great WRKO. Steve in Leominster, you're up next. Go ahead, Steve.
Hey, Jeff.
Hi.
Thanks for having me on. I agree with 99% of what you've been saying all morning, but there's been an update on things. You still keep saying that Cohen was wiretapped, and that's been debunked. That NBC, 4 hours after they came out with that report, had to retract it, and Trump's even calling NBC fake news now.
No, Steve, I understand what you're saying, but they retracted it based on statements made to them by the FBI. And that's what I pointed out twice in the last hour. The FBI,
okay. I didn't catch that.
yeah, the FBI is trying to walk it back. The FBI is saying, here's what the FBI is now saying. No. Steve, we never wiretapped on Cohen, and obviously by extension the president. No, we just monitored him with the pen register. You know, so in other words, Steve, let me just give you a make-up number, okay? Steve called Steve Cohen, and all we wrote down was 617-600-1111. That's Steve's number. So that's all we're monitoring is the number that called Cohen. And what number did Cohen call? But we never listened to, let's say, I'm just using you as an example. We never listened to Steve's conversations with Michael Cohen. I don't believe him.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I know they walked it back. I understand that. You're accurate. What you're saying is accurate. I don't believe it. Steve, I'm telling you, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. But anyway, thank you very much for that call, Steve. I don't believe it. I think it's obvious they were spying on him. I think it's clear they were wiretapping him. And when it was the tremendous backlash. It was just the outrage in the country. And then all of a sudden, oh, did we say that? Oh, sorry. No. We're just interested in the numbers that he's calling and the numbers that are calling him. Right. Right.
I guess my question is, if it was just a pen registry and they were just looking at numbers, who did he call that warranted knocking down his door and stealing his files?
Brilliant.
Who did he call?
Brilliant. Exactly. Who did he call? Very good point, Jared. Tom in New Hampshire, you're up next. Go ahead, Tom.
Yes, I was just talking to Jared before I just came on this at this moment. Who's the governor? I can't pronounce his name, from Illinois that went to jail.
Blagojevich.
Yeah,
he's a Serbian American, by the way. I'm just pointing that out. That's one of the reasons why I followed that case so closely, because, you know, my heritage is from the former Yugoslavia. So, you know, I follow Croatians, Slovenians, Serbians. He's a Serbian American, Blagojevich. Mueller, he sat down with Mueller, and look what happened to Blago.
Yep, there you go. That's why I called, because this is the same tactic, and I suggest that if you have any clout, to get the word out to Trump, not to sit down with Mueller, see what happened to your co-patriot there. And he's sitting in jail for he's serving 7 years of 14-year term.
14 years, Tom. 14 years.
Yeah, this is why I think Trump needs to go to jail and talk to this guy.
Thank you very much for that call, Tom. I appreciate it. Rod Blagojevich, Blago. I'd say, Donald, have a conversation with Blago. Ask him how his conversation with Mueller turned out. No! Rod, Blago, we just want to talk. Did you sell that Senate seat? You're not a target of the investigation, Blago. We just want to clear the air here. And the same tactic, by the way. Let him talk and talk and talk and talk, and then they pounce.
Just bring $50 for the commissary.
John in Needham, you're up next. Go ahead, John.
Jeff, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you, John?
Good. If I was his lawyers, I would tell him to fire the whole crew, Mueller and everybody at the FBI and so on, and do it on TV, okay? Because I know either they have to charge him. When the police bring in a suspect for murder, the lawyer for the suspect says either charge him or let him go. Am I right or am I wrong?
You're completely right, John.
That's how it works. So I go on TV. You haven't found anything. I give you 24 hours to come up with a charge. Otherwise, you're all fired. And by the way, when they do charge you, you know, like the police, they got to go to the district attorney and say, this is the evidence we have. Can we charge him with this? And, you understand, you have to have proof. So there's nothing there. And the other thing I want to say is, why is the FBI and the Justice Department fighting so hard to give over all these emails or whatever the Congress is looking for? I'll bet you a dime to a dollar there was discussion of assassination.
John, you actually set me up for a perfect tease for the next segment. Thank you for that call, John. Spot on. Coming up next, the devastating House Intelligence Report. So why is the deep state redacting so much of it? You got to listen to the next segment. coming up after a short news break.
The voice of Boston is you. 680 WRKO Boston, 100.7 WZLX HD2 Boston, an iHeart radio station.